Well, his contract has been extended numerous times. Jens Stoltenberg has been NATO Secretary General for almost a decade. He's expected to pass the baton to his successor at an upcoming summit in Washington, D.C. to mark NATO's 75th anniversary. He or she must have unanimous support within the alliance. It's a tall order. DW's Terry Schultz has been looking into who could possibly fit that bill.
It's been one of the most popular guessing games in Brussels for years. Who will replace Jens Stoltenberg? The Norwegian NATO chief has been asked to stay on as head of the Western Military Alliance 4 times, once even after he'd already accepted another job.
It is time for NATO leaders to find a good candidate. It's really important that a choice is made early enough and that it is delinked from both the European Union elections and the campaign for the United States elections.
Just why the alliance has been unable to find a suitable replacement is not exactly clear, in part because there's no official procedure for doing so. There has been an unofficial list of desired qualities: experience as a head of state or government, of a country with robust defense spending, from a southern or eastern ally, and preferably, finally, a woman. Many names have come up and gone down. Currently, Latvian Foreign Minister Krišjānis Kariņš, Estonian Prime Minister Kaja Kallas, and outgoing Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte all want the job. Rutte has gradually emerged as the clear favorite, a safer choice with Moscow's war on Ukraine dominating the alliance agenda.
There is this sense that having somebody from the Baltic states to be at the helm of NATO would be somehow counterproductive or not helpful. And it's difficult to see what exactly then the problem is, because the relations with Russia are frozen at this point in any case.
Mark Rutte is reportedly the only candidate who's been discussed by NATO ambassadors. And while this all takes place behind the scenes, Kaja Kallas is making clear she's noticed that what used to be considered the desired qualities in a new leader, which she fulfills, seem to have changed. Take a look.
It should definitely be from a country that has spent 2% of their GDP on defense. And it would be nice if it would be a woman. So it's logical, it's Mark Rutte.
Estonia's defense spending will reach 3% of GDP, while the Netherlands won't quite hit NATO's target of 2%. The NATO dynamics are so closely watched that this exchange between Rutte and Kallas at a European Union summit led to suggestions he may have been using the opportunity to build consensus for the job on the other side of town. We asked.
No. I don't do that. Thank you. Bye-bye.
But it's not only European support a new NATO Secretary General will need, with U.S. elections looming.
There is still the question of picking someone who could adapt to a variety of possible outcomes in Washington. And some of those outcomes could be very challenging politically for Europe.
Jens Stoltenberg earned the title of the Trump Whisperer because he was so successful at managing the then U.S. president's disdain for NATO. And Rutte may already have an advantage there, should it become necessary.
We've become friends over the last couple of years.
But even though speculation has gone on for years, insiders say it's still too early to predict the outcome.
Nothing is decided until everything is decided.
The one thing that does seem certain is that Jens Stoltenberg will finally get to leave the post as the second longest-serving NATO Secretary General so far.
DW's Terry Schultz. She filed that report. She joins me now from Brussels. Good to see you, Terry. You know, Stoltenberg, he's kind of like the Duracell battery bunny, just keeps going and going and going. I mean, his contract, you said, extended 4 times. You know, why did they do that? Why did they just give the job to someone else who, you know, would have qualified to lead NATO? Why extend it so many times?
You know, it wasn't always his own choice, Brent. He actually wanted to leave more than once. He took another job at the Norwegian Central Bank, and then he wasn't basically allowed to leave. And so this is how it's gone. After the first 4-year term, you had Trump in office, and Stoltenberg was somehow getting along with Trump and managing to tamp down his temper tantrums. And everybody was like, okay, let's renew his contract because we don't want to rock the boat. We don't want to risk someone coming in who can't manage Trump. And then another 4-year contract came up, and the war in Ukraine started. Russia's attack on Ukraine, and everybody was like, we don't want to rock the boat again. And so that was 8 years gone. And then there were 2 years between that and the 75th anniversary coming up this summer. And there was a big push to just extend him further. You know, he's a likable guy. Nobody is really opposed to him. There are countries who would have liked to bring in another candidate, but it basically made sense. And the world has been in turmoil, and they just didn't want to risk someone new.
You know, it is a requirement in NATO that all members be democracies. And you said the selection process here for a new head mostly takes place behind closed doors in private negotiations. I mean, that doesn't seem very democratic.
I can see where the criticism comes from because nobody knows what's going on. And again, this process is so secretive that literally when we were referring earlier to the time that Stoltenberg was almost going home, his staff had applied for jobs back in Oslo and everybody was gossiping about it. Then those job applications were pulled back, and that's how we knew he was staying. That's how behind closed doors this is. No one talks about it. And even those candidates who would like the job don't really campaign for it. They're not really encouraged to talk about it. Mark Rutte's candidacy was basically deduced because he said he wouldn't be opposed to getting the job. He said it in Dutch on a local radio station. So this is really murky, this process. And you can see from that clip with Estonian Prime Minister Kaja Kallas that she doesn't like that, she came out on that panel and said, yeah, I'd like to be considered. But, you know, it comes down to having to get unanimity, and some countries veto way more than others, and you have to get the United States on your side, and the U.S. has wanted to keep Stoltenberg, and it seems they now want Mark Rutte.
You mentioned the trepidation in Europe about a potential second Trump administration. Do you think the Iowa results showing how popular he is that going to have an impact on the outcome at NATO?
I would definitely say that this will just propel even further the trends that we saw toward Mark Rutte for the reasons that I mentioned in the piece, that he seems to have a congenial relationship with Trump. On the other hand, those people who don't want a pushover for a Secretary General could also point to the fact that Rutte has argued with Trump. Trump once said, sitting next to Mark Rutte, you know, it'll be fine if we don't get an EU trade deal, a European Union trade deal. You know, that works fine. And Mark Rutte interrupted him and said, no, that's not okay. We need a trade deal. So I think that he basically ticks those boxes, although there are plenty of countries who would very much like to see a qualified woman, would like to see someone who's not from Northern Europe, but it doesn't look like they're going to get what they want.
Just to ask you this, just throw this at you. If we were talking about a second term for President Biden or just another person, not Trump being the next president, do you think that the possibility of the next head of NATO being a woman, that would not even be an issue here?
I don't. And if you had asked me a year ago, I would have said I do think a woman would have had a much greater chance. And there were women in the past who had thrown their hat in the ring. Kaja Kallas isn't the first one. But it seemed that the trend toward Rutte started even before Trump's lead became obvious. It just may be that, the default is that people are comfortable with men who've been in power for a really long time, as Mark Rutte has. Everyone seems to be comfortable with him. Yeah,
that's right. The Trump shadow tends to be a long one, that's for sure. Terry Schultz in Brussels. Terry, as always, we appreciate your reporting tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.